Welcome back to Analista de la Liga with me, Terry Gibson, for one of my weekend previews where I, for a bit of fun, predict what I think the outcomes are going to be for this weekend's action. Got all 10 right last week, which is not usual. Not sure if it was an easy week to predict everything. Predicted 9 correct outcomes, and then I predicted the scoreline of 3-2 for Real Sociedad against Athletic Club in the Basque Derby. So that was the only game I predicted the scoreline, and that was right. So all 10 correct last week. Not sure if it's going to be any easier this week or any tougher. But there are some interesting games coming up, and it's, as always, time to reflect on what happened last week. Particularly those involved in European football. Champions League wasn't too successful with La Liga clubs. Going to do a post about that during the week in the international break. Looking a little bit closely on the maybe why the Spanish teams are suffering in the Champions League. But looking ahead to this week's action, we start on Friday night with Elche against Real Sociedad. So Real Sociedad, as I say, predicted that win last week. They've been showing signs, a little glimmer of hope in terms of scoring more goals. I think that win will give them a boost. Elche, like we saw last week, play against Barcelona. They go Barcelona again. That had that stat of out-possessing Barcelona first time in God knows how long, but they lost 3-1. It got a little bit complicated for me watching Elche last week. They swapped the fullbacks over, they swapped the wingers over. It looked like the players were a little bit complicated too, but they did create chances. They would work twice. They could have come away from something in that game against Barcelona. But it was an up and to and fro game, and Barcelona, I think, always were going to win it in terms of having the better quality in attacking players. So this one's a little tricky one to predict. Elche started the season off well, have been suffering a little bit of late, so I'm going to go with another victory for Real Sociedad. It's going to be a close one, a real hard-fought game on the Friday night. It's a decent game to watch. Both teams play good football, but I'm going to go for the away win in this one for Real Sociedad. We start off Saturday with Girona against Alaves. Girona are just a shambles at the moment. It's not getting any easier for them. I'm looking at they got beat last week against Getafe, which I predicted on the Friday night. I'm not going to keep saying I predicted that because I got all 10 right, but I thought Getafe would have too much for them last week, and 2-0 would have been a fairer scoreline. Girona got a late penalty to make it 2-1. It looked closer than it was eventually. And this one, Girona against Alaves. I like what Alaves are doing this season. They got a good win last week. I'm going to go for a draw in this one. Alaves are stronger at home than they are away. But I'm going to go for a draw. But the draws are, I'm not sure if they're enough for Girona at the moment. I think I'm being generous, actually, giving Girona the draw. But when I look at their team and look at their squad, I can't work out why they are suffering. This is a massive game for Girona because it comes just the last game before the international break. If they weren't to win this game or if they get beat, I think the club have got a decision to make. I think when I look at the quality of the squad, as I say, they shouldn't be suffering like this. I'm not predicting they should be challenging for European football again, but I think they should be doing far better than what they are. At the moment, they're bottom of the league. It's going to be a struggle. So when I say the club have got a decision to make, I genuinely believe the future of Michel, the manager, is up for debate. As I say, I could understand it if it was a poor squad, but it isn't. So I think if the squad, in my opinion, is decent enough to finish comfortably mid-table, they're bottom of the table going into week 12, I think there's questions to be asked. So I'm going to go for the draw because, as I say, Alaves are better at home than they are away, but they're a decent team. I think they'll get something from this game, so I'm going to go for a draw in that one. I'm co-commentating on Saturday afternoon on Sevilla against Osasuna. Just been doing me prep for that game before I fly out to Madrid, and it's not looking for great reading for either team at the moment. Osasuna got 1 point away from home. They've scored 1 goal, and that was a penalty. That in a defeat against Villarreal. The only point they've got was a 0-0 at Oviedo. Sevilla have only won 1 game at home this season, and that was against Barcelona when they looked so impressive. Osasuna got 1 point from the last 3 games. Sevilla haven't got a point from the last 3 games. So it's looking pretty grim for both teams at the moment, I have to say. I'm going to go for a home victory. And Ante Budimir, who's the only player that scores a goal for Osasuna, is going to be missing through injury. So I'm struggling to see where the goals are going to come from Alessio Lisci's team. As I say, poor run of form away from home. I'm just going to go for a narrow home victory for Sevilla in this one. So that takes us into Atletico against Levante. Newly promoted Levante, struggling. They're finding it hard to pick up points. It's not been a disaster by any means. The two newly promoted teams that are struggling the most, Oviedo and Levante. Elche have got off to a good start, but just finding it tougher at the moment. But Levante are finding it tough. As are every team that play at the Metropolitano. Atletico Madrid are in great form at home. 3-0 victory last week against Sevilla. Took them a while to get going. It was 0-0 at half time. But again, players from the bench do help Simeone's team. Such a strong squad. I do not see a slip up in this game for Simeone's team. So I'm going to predict the home win. And then on looking at Espanyol against Villarreal is the late game on Saturday evening. Villarreal were absolutely awful, I have to say. I was trying to think of the correct way to describe their performance against Paphos in the Champions League. They were fantastic last week in the 4-0 victory against Rayo. They looked against Paphos, they could still be there now and they wouldn't score. It was a really, really dismal performance. So I'm expecting a fight back from Villarreal, from Marcelino's team. And Espanyol, again, a fantastic start. They've been going great guns, to be honest, and far better than anybody expected them to do this season. And, I mean, they were the team that lost to Alaves 2-1 last week. I wouldn't say the wheels have come off, but they're finding it a bit tougher. They're up against really good opponents in Villarreal when they want to be, and that's been most of the season. So I'm going to go for an away victory for Marcelino's team. It's going to be a tough one, that's for sure, but I'm going to go for Villarreal just to edge it. That takes us into Sunday's games. We start with Athletic Club against Oviedo. Oviedo, yep, they're going to struggle all season, no doubt about that. Last week, the 0-0 draw didn't really help them much in terms of, they need wins. They need a win at home in particular against a team last week in Osasuna that don't play well away from home. So it's better than a defeat, but just about. And Oviedo going into this one against Athletic Club. There's a little slim glimmer of hope for Oviedo because Athletic Club, it weren't a great week for Spanish teams in the Champions League. I kind of excuse Athletic Club. They were missing both the Williams brothers. They were missing the centre-forward Guruzeta. Sanadi, the replacement centre-forward, was missing. And Oyen Sanset was missing. So the entire front four were missing for Valverde's team. So their attitude was good. Their spirit was good. The high point was Selton, who's an 18-year-old midfield player coming on, and Asio Herrero, who's a 20-year-old centre-forward, and both looked really well when they got on for 20 minutes at the end. So, yes, more evidence of more young talent coming through Athletic Club. Against Oviedo, I think that would just be enough. I hope we see more of Selton in particular. He's the 18-year-old type of player that Athletic are crying out for, to be honest. And Sansa has disappointed in that position. He's injured again. So it'd be interesting to see if they do, after the successful 20 minutes they had, whether they get any more playing time this weekend. I still think they have just too much for Oviedo. Don't see Oviedo scoring. I don't see Athletic scoring many, but I'm going to go for a home win just for Athletic Club. I'm commentating on Sunday as well on this game. Looking forward to this one. Rayo Vallecano against Real Madrid. Real Madrid coming for some criticism after the performance against Liverpool. I think they're going along nicely in La Liga, and they're going along nicely in the Champions League, playing the English champions away from home. It's not a disaster to lose 1-0. Courtois kept the scoreline down. Real Madrid had one or two chances. There's still some deficiencies, I think, with the Real Madrid shape, the system of play from Xabi Alonso. I think he will resolve that. It needs some big decisions. This weekend I'm looking no Tchouaméni. He's out injured. Of course, Dani Carvajal's still missing. Rudiger, Alaba, Mastantuono is a doubt. Probably not going to be fit. Trent Alexander-Arnold is back. So that does keep things nice and simple with a back four. I imagine that Valverde goes back into midfield. I imagine Trent comes in at right back, and you got Militao, House, and Carreras playing at the back. The predicted team is Valverde, Goulet, and Bellingham in midfield, and a recall for Rodrigo to play on the right, Vinicius on the left, and Mbappe up the middle. That's what the predicted starting 11 is going to be for Real Madrid. I get that. My issue with the shape of Real Madrid at the moment, and you look at every single game they play, they have a left winger in Vinny, they have a centre forward in Mbappe, nobody on at all on the right. And with the ball and without the ball, it's a problem. So I think Xabi Alonso, they claim it's a 4-4-2, but it's not, because Mbappe's playing on the middle, Vinicius is on the left. You can't count that as a front two. So I think there needs to be some adaptation, I think, from Xabi Alonso. In this game, they're predicting he's going to go with the front three, so that fits in well with Vinicius playing on the left, Rodrigo on the right, and Mbappe in the middle, and he keeps the three in midfield. Now, there's no big wins in the last 10 games for Real Madrid against Rayo Vallecano. They've had 5 wins by 1 goal. And last season at Vallecas, it's been tough, but it is for most teams these days. Last 3 seasons at Vallecas, it's been a 3-3 draw, a 1-1 draw, and a 3-2 victory for Rayo. So last season it was the 2-1 win at home for Real Madrid, a 3-3 draw away from home. These games can be spectacular. Rayo picked up a draw against Barcelona this season. Barcelona got criticised. But as I said, Rayo are a good team. They're in the European Conference League. Fantastic win for them midweek. They were 2-0 down. 7 changes from the regular La Liga starting lineup. Some of them had to come on and dig them out of trouble, and they did. They won 3-2. But as I say, so there's going to be no hangover of players feeling weary and tired after the playing on the Thursday night. As I say, there were 7 changes. So this is a really tough one to predict. I'm leaning towards a Real Madrid victory, but I'm also looking at Rayo and thinking, we all admire their spirit. It's a difficult place to go and play a game of football for any team. The surroundings are not familiar to the Bernabeu, anything but. Rayo raise their game when they play against these teams, and Inigo Perez, and it's just like Antonio Iraola. They love being the underdog. Issy Palazon is a threat. Alvaro Garcia is in good form. Alameo's come in and done really well up front. Part of me keeps saying it's Real Madrid and they're going to win. I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory for Real Madrid. So I was leaning towards a 2-2. It's very possible Rayo gets something from this game, but I'm just going to go for the away victory for Real Madrid. There we go, Mallorca, Getafe. I mean, Getafe just keep churning out results. They're as I say every week, they're hard to play against. Mallorca really suffering at the moment. They're really struggling to pick up sufficient points. They started off with a really tough fixture list, and it looks like that has drained their confidence when they didn't pick up wins. They didn't pick up points. Heavily defeated last week away from home against Betis, 3-0 victory for Betis. So I'm looking at this game and thinking, Getafe, I think, gets something from this game. It may well be a win. I'm going to go for the away win for Getafe. This was the closest game I came to predicting a draw. I'm going to go for Getafe to get the win at Mallorca, and then we go into Valencia against Betis. Valencia are just as bad as Girona, in my opinion, this season, and I'm not suggesting for one moment that they make a managerial change, but there needs to be changes at that club. There needs to be changes in the team selection, a change in the style of play, try and get some consistency in their style of play as well. It changes from game to game. Team selections all over the place. It has the look of a manager now that's struggling to find the formula, and he's trying this and he's trying that, and nothing's working. And sometimes I know that makes it worse. You've got to have a plan. You've got to try and stick to it. Try and get some consistency in performances, and it gives you a better chance. So Betis are just flying. Fantastic win in Europe in midweek against Lyon, and as I say, the 3-0 win against Mallorca last week at home. Valencia at the Mestalla away from home shouldn't be any problem for Betis. So I'm going to go for a away victory for Betis in that one. And we finish off on the Sunday night because there's no Monday game because it's the international breaks. All the games are concluded before the end of the Sunday night. And it's Celta against Barcelona. Rayo against Real Madrid. That's a tricky game for Real Madrid. And I talked about Real Madrid's recent run of form at Vallecas. This applies to Barcelona as well against Celta Vigo. I mean, Barcelona will have Lewandowski back. They've got Dani Olmo back. They come off the bench midweek against Brugge in that ridiculous game. We're going to have to talk about Barcelona's defence, or lack of defence. There isn't any. Deficiencies all over the pitch. I describe them at the moment as a banged-up football club in terms of they're a little bit beaten up by everything. The financial problems. Messing around, when I say messing around with the return date of going back to the Camp Nou. So a couple of games at the training grounds, some games at Montjuic, injured players missing. They look weary, and this is going to be a tough game. But as I say, Lewandowski is back, Dani Olmo is back. There's talk of João Garcia being involved in training sessions. They had a training session at the Camp Nou, open to the public, 20-odd thousand people there. And João Garcia was one of those players that was taking part in training. So good news on that. Christensen is back as well. He's one of the centre-backs that Hansi Flick hasn't used much this season. But seeing the state of play with the back four at the moment, be interesting to see the lineup that Hansi Flick picks. Does he start Olmo? Does he start Lewandowski? Remains to be seen. But they're facing a team in Celta Vigo who won 5 on the trot in all competitions. They're unbeaten in the last 8. They were having problems at the start of the season by drawing every single game 1-1. It became a laughing joke, a laughing stock in the end. That you didn't have to look at their result; you just knew it was going to be 1-1. They've got attacking players that can trouble Barcelona. So Pablo Duran, who's a young player, he's been amongst the goals lately. Borja Iglesias, decent goal scoring record against Barcelona. He's in good form this season. And Brian Zaragoza, the tricky winger, on loan from Bayern Munich. So they've got the attacking players to trouble Barcelona. Last season in this game, Barcelona were 2-0 up, 81 minutes. Marc Casado got sent off. They conceded 2 sloppy late goals to draw 2-2. So Celta have the ability. The last 10 games that Barcelona played against Celta Vigo in this stadium, Celta have won 4, Barcelona have won 2. And there's been 4 draws. So the potential is there, clearly, for this game to go in favour of the home team. But I can't go against Barcelona. I just think if you have a game of a to and throw, which this will be, there'll be goals in this game. It's guaranteed. It could be 3-3, it could be 3-2, either way. But I'm going to go for a 3-2 victory for Barcelona. Still no Rafinha. He's a huge loss. But I just think Barcelona will somehow dig a result out in this match. It's last season it was a 4-3 home victory, a 2-2 away a draw at Celta Vigo. So it's a tough one to call. It's going to be a tough game for Barcelona. I'm going to do a little feature midweek on the channel about Barcelona, about Real Madrid, about Atletico Madrid, about my feelings about the teams in the Champions League, in particular from La Liga this season. And so I'll go into greater detail on what I think of Barcelona's issues and problems. But as I say, I think they're a banged up, beaten up team at the moment. 1 or 2 injured players coming back. If they can get the win in this match, he'll keep them in touch with Real Madrid. And then, there's talk now, big talk, of them being back in the Camp Nou pretty soon. I think that's a must. Yeah, they just have a look at a team at the moment who just have had enough of being here, there and everywhere. All the drama, the players missing. If they can get a win in this one, keep in touch with Real Madrid, then things might get a bit brighter for them. And then we can look in depth at the defensive deficiencies that they have. Lamine Yamal, excellent against Brugge. He got stick about the game in the Classico, but he's bounced back. It's ridiculous they rely on an 18-year-old teenager to dig them out of trouble time and time again, but he's capable of doing so. So I'm going to go with a Barcelona win. I'm going to go with a 3-2 scoreline in favour of Barcelona. Off to Madrid tomorrow to get involved, as I say, with the COCOMs, and be in touch again later on in the week. 10 out of 10 last week.